Good evening. Welcome to the February 27th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting. We are honored this evening to have our Troy Police Department Chaplain Robert Cornwall to provide the invocation. So please rise for Pastor Cornwall. Remain standing after the invocation for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in prayer. Holy One, the community gathers this evening as its leaders deliberate on the business of a city that is diverse and open to change. Important decisions must be made that affect the citizens of the community, young and old, and everyone in between. In this religiously diverse community, I come as a Christian but seeking to represent all of my neighbors, whatever their religious traditions, to offer prayers on their behalf for this community and its leaders. We who are members of this community are grateful for those who willingly answer the call to serve the community in positions of leadership. We are especially grateful for the commitment to the community and its welfare made by the mayor and the members of the city council. This is a time-consuming and often unappreciated commitment, yet each of these leaders of our community have exhibited a willingness to step forward and lead, sometimes at great sacrifice. We recognize that this call to serve doesn't occur in a vacuum. Decisions made here in this body are impacted by realities that lie far beyond what happens in Troy. When we survey the world around us, we see a world that appears to be in disarray. There's anger, frustration, confusion, and violence. And while some of us are insulated from these challenges, there are others in our community directly impacted. So as the leaders of this community navigate these realities and seek to give hope to those who live and work in this community, we ask that you would grant them wisdom, insight, compassion, and grace. And may the decisions they make be made with the common good of all in mind. And may we who live and work and serve in this community, whether in positions of leadership or not, commit ourselves to be good and gracious neighbors to one another. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate your words, as always. I'll officially call the February 27th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting to order, and I'll ask for the roll call from Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham? Here. Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt? Here. Councilmember Hamilton? Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
I did receive communication from Councilmember Hamilton today that he would not be able to attend due to being under the weather, for lack of a better term. So I will resolve that Troy City Council hereby excuses the absence of Councilmember David Hamilton at the regular City Council meeting of February 27th, 2023 due to health concerns.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga, that we approve the excuse the absence of Councilmember David Hamilton for the reasons stated before. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. First up are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We don't have any this evening, and there are no carryover items, so we move right into public hearings. We have one this evening. E1 is a public hearing, planned unit development, file number PUD 019, JPLN 2022-0013, proposed Village of Troy PUD, south side of Long Lake, west of Rochester, parcels number 88-20-15-201-046, and number 88-20-15-201-033. Section 15, currently zoned RT, one family attached residential, R1C, one family residential, and CB, community business district. And I see that Community Development Director Brent Salvadon has joined us for the presentation. Go ahead, Brent.
Good evening, Mayor Baker, City Council. It's been a while. Nice to see everyone again. City Manager Miller asked me to add an educational component to tonight's agenda because we don't see a lot of planned unit developments, or PUDs as they're commonly referred to. So the first few slides here are dedicated to that end. So what is a PUD? If there's one takeaway from the meeting this evening, it's this slide. A PUD is a negotiated process. Everything is negotiated, everything is on the table with a PUD, from the use, setbacks, height, layout, doorknobs, siding, paint color, everything's potentially on the table for negotiation with the PUD. The intent of the PUD, this is lifted straight out of the zoning ordinance. It's intended to permit flexibility in design and in use, which hopefully achieves a number of these goals that are listed below. They include long-term social, environmental, and economic sustainability, flexibility in design, protection of or preservation of natural, historic, and cultural resources, and providing for enhanced housing, employment, recreation, and shopping opportunities. The reason that we have PUD is, first of all, they're authorized under the Zoning Enabling Act, but pragmatically, they attempt to find a balance between what the developer seeks and what the city seeks. The developer, in an ideal world, wants flexibility. They want to be able to do what the market says they should do, whereas the city wants predictability. And what a PUD does is it strikes that balance between flexibility and predictability. That balance is negotiated through the PUD process. In terms of a timeline, this is mandated by the zoning ordinance. The first step in a PUD is what's called a concept development plan, or CDP. In that first step, there's a planning commission public hearing, they make a recommendation, then there's a city council public hearing. And during that step, the concept plan is approved, the PUD agreement, which is all the legal requirements of the PUD, is approved, and the property is rezoned to PUD. Those three things happen with the concept development plan approval. Following that, the next step is preliminary development plan, or PDP approval. That also requires planning commission public hearing recommendation, and city council public hearing and recommendation for each phase of the development. So that's the first two steps. The next step is a final engineering plan, where the applicant submits engineering plans. Those are reviewed and approved administratively. And once they have engineering approval, they can submit for building permits. And when the building plans are approved administratively, they can start construction. Now, this application is a little bit different because they're combining the first two steps, because they don't need flexibility laid out in the concept plan. They know exactly what they want to do. They want to, and I'll get into the details, but they don't need any flexibility delivered by the market over time. They know exactly what they build, and it's exactly what's shown on the concept and the site plan. So they're seeking CDP and PDP tonight. They had a planning commission public hearing, and now they're before city council at a public hearing. There are a number of standards of approval for PUDs. The requirement is that the applicant demonstrate a sufficient number of these standards. I think there's 18 of them. There's 2 slides worth of standards. I'm not going to read these because we're going to talk about them at the end of the presentation as it applies to this development, but just know that these are the standards that are applied. I will say, I'm going to put Council Member Hoderick on the spot. I think you're the longest serving member of the City Council. And if you remember, Alan, historically when people talk about PUDs, the first thing people say is, well, what's the public benefit? What is the public benefit? And it's uttered in such a way that that's the only standard. That's the third standard here of 18, natural, recognizable and material benefit. It's only one standard of 18. It's not the only standard. So it's one of those narratives over time that just kind of gets shared and accepted as fact, but it's, again, one of 18 standards. Every applicant is different, every property is different, market conditions are different, every PUD is different. I'm going to give you 3 examples. Some of them you may know they're PUDs, some of them you may not know. This is PUD number 1. This is one of the first projects I ever worked on when I started at Troy. Woodside Bible and Northwick PUD, a very large church, But to the north of that, there's also 84 townhome units and 84 condominium units, and 25-acre protected wetlands as part of that mixed-use PUD. This is a PUD that I visit very frequently. I'm a big fan of a couple of the businesses in here. This is the Big Beaver and Kilmer PUD, located just to the east of us a little ways. It includes 19,000 square feet of retail and 16 townhome units. And the third example is just to the east of us across Livernois. This is Stonecrest PUD. It's a 100-bed assisted living facility. It includes 80-space parking lot on city property. They also use city property to do some land balancing when they developed this facility, and they contributed $50,000 that went towards the dog park. Another creative use of land, another creative application of the PUD provisions. So now that we're all experts on PUDs, we'll talk about the Village of Troy PUD that's before us this evening. So as background, it's located on the south side of Long Lake Road, just a little bit west of Rochester. It's a little over 20 acres in size. It's currently vacant. I would note that over time, there's been a lot of construction staging, including a few times there was batch plants on the site. There's a lot of fill that's been left over from these efforts. The fill is contaminated, not in a chemical or toxic way, but it's not clean fill. It's got chunks of aggregate in it. It's not appropriate for foundations. They have to remove the fill from the developable area to make a developable piece of land. And I'll get into this a little bit, what they've proposed to do is relocate a lot of that fill right here in this area. And I would note, this is also very important. To the south, this is the Goodman industrial piece. This is zoned industrial. And then down here is a DPW yard with outdoor storage of equipment and a salt bin and some other kind of noisy, unsightly things that go on there. So to the south, very industrial in character. There are 4 small wetlands on site. 3 of them are not regulated, which means they can fill them because the city of Troy does not have a wetlands ordinance, but there is one regulated wetland approximately here that they do propose to do some filling of that wetland, and they will need approval from the state of Michigan, from Eagle, in order to do any work in that wetlands, which will be a condition of approval for final approval. There's a number of trees on the site, over 600 trees. If you look at the list, though, a lot of those are generally considered poor quality. There's cottonwoods and elms and ash trees, and there's only 10 landmark trees, which are quality species and of a significant size. So they are removing most of those trees, and they're required to plant 552 caliper inches of trees, and they're going to exceed that by 3 inches. So there's going to be a lot of trees planted on this site, quality trees, to offset the loss of some of those trees. Current zoning, it's zoned 3 different zoning districts. Where most of the development is here is RT, one family attached. There's also a portion that's zoned one family residential, and also a portion here that's zoned CB community business. Come on. There we go. We all know that the master plan is a policy document. It's not a legal document, so it doesn't delineate properties on a parcel by parcel basis. It's more of a conceptual, we call it kind of a blob map. And this is generally the area here. You'll notice there's 3 different land use designations. There's the neighborhood node designation here in light blue. That calls for mixed use. It calls for relative density in terms of residential development. We've got the single family residential district here, which we know is about calls for single family residential districts. Then in the dark green is the Rochester Road land use classification, which does allow for creative development, including sustainable stormwater treatment. It also calls for relative density for multifamily residential. So it is consistent with the underlying classifications in this area. Here's the site plan. It's mixed use insofar as there are 3 different residential housing options that are proposed, a total of 146 units. And you see in the northwest portion here, 20 single-family homes. Then going to the east, 56 attached 2-story homes. And then here, we've got 70 attached townhomes that are 3 stories, 35 feet in height. In terms of parking and traffic, they do exceed the parking requirements for the site. The applicant submitted a traffic impact study that was reviewed and approved by the city's traffic consultant. They proposed direct access from Long Lake and Rochester. It's indicated with the arrows. They do require, and they propose, and this has to be heading westbound along Lake. There'll be a left-hand turn lane that allows visitors to pull in here. The Planning Commission was concerned with the potential for 2 speed humps here and here to deter cut-through traffic, force people to make that cut-through a little uncomfortable by raising. Amount of amenities for this project. I show in red here, I showed the non-motorized trail. This trail is going to go to the south through the DPW parcel, through 2 other development applications by City Council, one that's going to come before them in the near future. That potential then to connect into the school property to the southwest, and then ultimately it could potentially connect all the way to the end of the trailway that is on Wattles Road. So there's hope to extend our existing basically another mile all the way to Long Lake Road and Rochester Road, which is pretty excited, and that is one of the benefits I talked about earlier. It's interconnection with sidewalks and with this walkway. And what's also proposed is a regional stormwater detention system that's located to the southwest on the story. A number of pre-application meetings with developers around the same time, within the space of just a couple weeks. We met with this developer. We met with the developer for the project on Eckford that this council approved. We met with the Mondrian on another parcel on Eckford across the street, and we also met with the owner of the property over here on Rochester Road. So there was 4 developers that were kind of kicking the tires on redevelopment at the same time. So I had a meeting with representatives of the DPW and engineering and the city manager's office, and we talked about the potential for doing something special here with stormwater, because the 4 developments, those are 4 separate districts, basins, detention basins. So that's 4 times where when we ultimately take over the basins, that's 4 cuts, loading up the trailer and unloading and cutting 4 different times. So there's a significant benefit to creating 1 large regional detention basin versus creating 4. So we are partnering with these developers in creating a regional detention basin to the southwest of this, which will also accommodate some of the stormwater runoff from the widening of Rochester Road. So there's a lot of benefit to creating this regional detention basin. I'm by no ways an expert on this, but we've got Scott Finley and Kurt Bovensiepe who are way more knowledgeable about this than I am, but it is a benefit associated with this development. The applicant provided this diagram that illustrates the differences in the housing types. The 20 one-family attached units, they will provide a 1-story ranch option that are about 1,800 square feet, and they also provide a 2-story home ranging from 1,900 square feet to 3,100 square feet. The one family attached, again, is 2 stories, 30 feet in height. These will be about 1,600 square feet and will include 2-car garages. And then the townhomes, 70 townhome units, they're 3 stories, 35 feet in height. They'll feature 1 and 2-car garages, and they'll range from 1,200 to 1,350 square feet. So you see the full gamut of opportunities for people who are looking to own homes. They do propose quality building materials of brick, board, and batten, and some vinyl siding. And if you have questions about the design of the units, Tim Lochran is here from Robertson Brothers, and he can answer your questions. So, getting back to the intent statement of the PUD, flexibility. Now, theoretically, the applicant could have put attached units here on the RT piece, and they could have put single family here. But this really doesn't want to be single family because of the industrial character to here and here. So what the applicant's done is take the single family that would have went here, put it up here. As a transition between the existing residential, what better transition if you're going to develop a site from single family than more single family? So that single family was constructed here. Again, townhomes here and 2-family attached there. But the thinking was because of the industrial yard here in the DPW to the south, that this area could be built as 3-story townhomes to kind of provide a sound buffer and a vision buffer from the houses to the north. I mentioned the soil. They wanted to create an amenity using the fill and also save a lot of money by not trucking the fill off-site. So it was decided that the best location for that was to the south. I'm going to assume that one of the council members is going to ask me if this is a density increase or a density grab, and it's not. 146 units, I did some simple math. The density of RT is about 8.7 units an acre. This comes in at 7.13 units an acre overall, so it's less than RT by over a unit an acre. But I dug a little bit deeper, and I applied the density calculations of RT to the existing portion that's zoned RT. So if that was built out, they'd get around 115 units. If the RC area was constructed R1C area was constructed as single family, they get about 16 units. And if they rezoned the CB, commercial business area, which is about 2 acres, if that was rezoned to RT, they'd be at about the same number of units. So really, it's a comparable number of units as a PUD than it would be if that CB portion was rezoned and it was developed as you see on the screen, which I found very interesting. They do seek some deviations from the underlining zoning. Again, everything's negotiable, but as a comparison, these are the deviations that they seek from zoning. They propose to utilize some of the CB property, the commercial property here for townhomes, as well as these townhomes just barely fall in the R1C, 1-family residential area. They seek relief for the single family. They seek relief for front yard setbacks here and for side yard setbacks 2 feet for these single family homes. For the 2-family, the single family attached development, they seek 5-foot setback relief on the front yard and a 5-foot setback relief on the rear yard. And finally, for the buffering here to the south, they seek relief of 5 additional feet for the townhomes. So not a significant number of deviations. So this is I call this the deviations versus benefits ledger. On the left, you see the deviations. I just went over those. And on the right, you start to put together a list of the benefits that are associated with this property. And just to go through them really quickly, pathway system and trailhead, significant connectivity and accessibility, transition between this and the single-family residential neighborhood to the west, as well as the industrial to the south, multiple housing options, quality architecture and design, recreational amenities and open space, unified community kind of village feel, and contribution to a regional stormwater solution. So the ledger starts to be pretty balanced, I would argue. So now when we look at standards of approval, and I underline the ones that seem to apply here: mixture of land uses, public improvement or public facility, recognizable and material benefit, compatible mixture of open space, landscape area, and or pedestrian amenities, appropriate land use transitions, compact development. The PUD will reasonably mitigate impacts to the transportation system and enhance non-motorized facilities and amenities. Improvement of existing sites that are obsolete. A complementary variety of housing types. Development which will promote the intent of the master plan. And finally, innovative methods of stormwater management. Ticks a lot of boxes here, in my opinion. There was a public hearing of the Planning Commission in September. The last time the Planning Commission considered this item was December 13th. There's an error in the memo. The memo incorrectly states that it was recommended 7-1. It was 7-0. That was my mistake. And with that long-winded presentation, I can answer any questions you may have.
Before that, let's go to City Manager Miller.
Yeah, I just want to add one fact, one aspect of this is the petitioner is seeking Brownfield Redevelopment Authority plan, and the state law does allow to move barriers to development. It's that fill, so they can get reimbursed on moving that fill. The plan is prepared, and we're waiting for approval of this before we start moving it to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, and then eventually City Council.
Thank you, City Manager Miller. Okay, so several questions were asked in writing before, and those are all part of the public record and can be accessed by anybody. But additional questions from council this time for Mr. Saladon, or you've got the petitioner?
Yeah, Mayor Baker, the petitioner does have a brief PowerPoint presentation they'd like to put up on the screen as well.
Should we do questions for you first, or what makes more sense? Are the questions going to get answered by his presentation? Let's do his presentation first, and then we'll come back. How about that?
Excellent, thank you.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Tim Lockeran, Robertson Brothers Home, 6905 Telegraph Road. The last time I was here was probably about a year ago for the Meadows of Troy project, so happy to report we've had about, I think, 7 or 8 sales, moving along. We're very excited, and I think it just looks beautiful. If you drive back there, it's absolutely gorgeous, so very happy about that. So good to see you all again. I'm going to just go through, a lot of my slides are probably very similar to Brent's, just maybe a little prettier. So we'll get started on some of these. So this is the perspective view as you come in off of Long Lake. So this would basically be the northwest portion of the development. And again, we wanted to make it a very rich entrance. That is the single family section. So that's what's the most visible to the outside world with this project. And again, I think this is a very nice entryway. So that is what we have on the plans. And then as you move down that entry road with the single family, you can see the single family on either side. And I'll maybe take a little bit of a pause here. The Planning Commission had a lot of feedback for us, and a lot of there have been a lot of changes over time, and I think all for the better. Maybe that was a density grab, if you will, but where we're at today, I think we're very happy with. And one of the things that they really wanted us to focus on, besides the density, was having these focal points as you drive down a street. So you have something that you can kind of focus your eye on some of these little pedestrian mews, if you will, and some of these courtyard areas. So this is one of those as you come in the main street. A little hard to see, I think, from the screen, but you'll see as you come down the street, you'll have a nice little pedestrian area with a planter area and a pedestrian refuge. That actually is off of the public pathway that Brent had kind of alluded to, and I'll show you in a second as well. So that's something that's open to the public and a nice little rest stop for people that are traversing through the property. And then this is actually at another terminus. That's not the shot I'm taking from here, but we'd have a nice little fountain area, and that is that pedestrian pathway as well. So again, connected. We had all these. We really wanted to have an interconnectivity of the pathway and some of these open space amenities. So that is one of those areas as well. That's kind of that what we call the Central Park area on the southern central portion of the project. And then this, I think this is the last one. This is that Sunset Knoll, as we're calling it. It's a scenic overlook. This is on the southwest corner of the site. That's screening the, there's multiple reasons for that hill, if you will. One of them is to screen the salt dome, and no offense, but we just thought it might be best for our future residents to be able to screen that a little bit. So, but again, it's also an ability to utilize some of that fill dirt and make it so it's a feasible project. The other thing you'll see in here is a dog park as well, which we think is a great amenity to have, and then just some public plaza areas. And that walkway going through, again, that's the pedestrian pathway, and it will connect around the hill and then eventually to a city path through the future detention pond, which Brent had mentioned. This is actually a drone shot from if you were standing on that Sunset Knoll. So we got it right at the exact location, and it's just beautiful. Everything to the west of that is city wetland complex. So one, I think, just the best parts of the project, a natural open space. So I won't go into too much detail because I think Brent did a fantastic job. Just to point out again, we did lower the density quite a bit, but the theme really has stayed the same from the beginning. We really wanted to create a village. We called it Village of Troy. There's a reason for it. This really is a village feel. You have multiple price points. You have multiple people kind of living together in this kind of interconnected development. So we ran with that from the beginning. We wanted to create a village and have these different areas, and by doing that, we were able to create a really nice transition from the industrial to the south, which you can see from that aerial. You certainly, we wouldn't expect to have, $1 million homes down there, right? So we had to come up with something that would be a nice buffer, and we think we've done that with the townhomes. And then buffered from the commercial, which is neighborhood node, would be the 2-story townhomes. These really are attached single-family homes, about 1,850 square feet. And then, it was important to us to buffer single family to single family. So that's what you see in the top left. Just another example of the sign as you come in off of Long Lake. And that fence would continue all the way along the Long Lake Road frontage. And I'll just do this quickly because Brent did a fantastic job. The product, again, is 20 single-family, 56 attached single-family condos, and 70 townhomes. About 40% of the site is open space. That's active and passive. And you can see just from the rendered plan how much green there actually is on the site. And again, that's something that we really like about this site. The unit sizes, they range from 1,300 to 3,100, so that's really quite a range, and we did that on purpose. That was something that we thought was very important. And really, any kind of product you're looking for, you can have in this community, including a ranch-style home, which is very similar to the product we're building on Square Lake east of John R. Project highlights, all owner-occupied. None of this is for rent. 146 new taxpayers. Currently, the taxes are $25,000. When it's up and running, it'll be $1 million per year. Publicly accessible trailhead, which I think really is a focus of this project. But we'll also have the Central Park amenity with a fountain and 7 pocket parks. About 6,000 lineal feet of sidewalk and 2,000 lineal feet of that trail. So it's quite a bit that we think is very important to have as part of our community. I mentioned the multiple price points. And none of this is what I would call affordable. It's nothing that says it's affordable housing, so I want to make sure that that's clear. But certainly we are aiming for attainable housing, and that's something that I think a lot of cities struggle with. I'd say missing middle, I know that's thrown around quite a bit, but we do think that buffer on the south side really hits an attainable price point that is important for people that are looking to move to Troy or stay in Troy. It'll clean up a blighted former fill site. There's a reason why there's 20 acres available in Troy. It's a very difficult site. In fact, there were times when we were doing our due diligence and we kind of threw up our hands and said, this might be too much for us. And we've really worked through it. We worked with staff, and we got to understand the site and kind of work with what we had. And that's why you see a lot of what we're proposing. I talked about the walkable community, obviously, already, several sustainable elements, and then the catalyst for the regional detention pond. Brent kind of mentioned it, but we've been working closely with city staff on how this will look, how this will kind of interact with that pedestrian walkway. So it's all kind of tied together. I'm very excited with what has kind of happened over the time. We will be building it. Expanding the current DPW pond to incorporate these other developments, and then we will then be having a cost share with the other developers. So it'll be on us to do that, and that's within the PUD plan. Mix of residential land uses. It's a targeted growth location. Brent sort of touched on this, but if you look at the master plan, it really focuses growth on this particular area. In fact, it has that medium density designation. And it provides for the housing options that are vastly underserved. And shameless self-promotion, we've been around a long time, and hopefully we have people think highly of us in the marketplace. Site context, I only show this because I think it is important. This is not, really in the middle of a residential area per se. We've got a lot of externalities. We've got that industrial site to the south, which really is, a blighted area. If you look at it, we're doing our best to shield that. You have a very intense neighborhood node at the corner, and that's why we're including some more of a medium density type of residential. And then the Rochester Road Special Area Plan, which again encourages a lot of density and development along Rochester Road. Brent had the same one, the same slide, but this is just showing how much of that public path. It was really important to get it up to Long Lake and connect there. So we thought of different ways of how to do that, and this is ultimately what was decided upon with the Planning Commission. And the product design, so again, it kind of runs the gamut. So the top left, that is very similar to what we're building at Meadows of Troy. It's a first floor master design. There would be a cape option similar to Meadows of Troy, but it's the same kind of plan. It's a first floor master, which is obviously very highly in demand here. Very rich materials, stone, brick, and hardy board. Same with the single family, same type of materials as on the top right. New product for us. We're building it in another community, and we're very excited about introducing this to Troy. In the middle is that two-story townhomes. That's actually a new product for us as well. But what that gives you is 3 bedrooms and a loft at a, I don't want to say affordable because it's not, but certainly much easier to get into than a single family home, which as we all know is almost impossible these days. So that's what we think is a really nice option for homeowners to be obviously a great school district. And then the townhomes on the bottom left, similar to what we've built in other projects here in Troy. So I think you're probably familiar with some of that. Again, Brent had the exact same slide. But just another thing on the townhomes, there are single car and 2-car options, so it's a little bit different. The single car is more for like young professionals. The 2-car is for kind of your early young families starting out. This is that single car. Again, that's a very open plan. Nobody lives on top of each other. They're not a stacked product. So it really feels like a single family home. 2 bedrooms. And actually, there's what we call the Zoom room down there on the first floor, the flex room. So that's been very popular with home buyers. This is the larger townhome, 1,600 square feet, so it's a decent size. 2-bedroom and a den, or just 2 bedrooms, but much more wide open. And there's also a studio on the first floor for that home. Attached single family, again, 1,850 square feet, as I mentioned, 3 bedrooms and a loft. And this really is, I think, will meet a lot of the needs of families in Troy. And the Raleigh, I don't need to show you that because I showed you that last year. But we think this is a great addition. Any of those 20 single family lots, somebody can build a ranch home on. And then just quickly with our single family, this is our single family product series. So that's all. I showed you probably the exact same slides that Brent did, but I'm happy to answer any questions or sit down and have you talk to Brent. So
Thanks, Tim. All right, I'll go back to what I said before. A lot of questions were asked before in writing, all part of the public agenda. But now, opportunity for questions from council for either the applicant, for Brent, maybe for Scott or Kurt, either. I'll start with Councilmember Hoderick.
This is a question, I believe, for the applicant based on the answer and the questions we sent in. Thank you for your
Yes, thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
I did drink in the Planning Commission discussions, and I saw the negotiations that went on and trade-offs that were made that, in the end, it sounds like you were pleased with
Yes.
much of what they nudged you to do. So
Nudged.
for anybody watching who doesn't nerd out and watch Planning Commission meetings and you wonder if you're being represented as a resident,
They're tough.
they're tough, and they're representing us very well. One of the commissioners at the approval meeting encouraged from a design viewpoint, and I am not an expert on design, but I know he is, board and batten in the large areas of the horizontal siding areas he thought would be aesthetically more attractive. And I think I saw you nod and agree that you would take a look at that. And I'd just like to confirm, one of the things that our fellow residents are looking for is the look and the quality. And I do know this is quality products. I know you do quality work. But the fact that he was honing in on that, you seem to connect with that, and I wondered if you could speak to that a bit.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So I think he was happy with all the single-family and the two-story townhomes. But yeah, we kind of went back and forth a little bit on the design of the three-story townhomes in regard to the vinyl. So I'd actually brought some in to show that and show the board and batten version of it as well. So I think we've evolved into the elevations that we've had.
Okay, all right. And the other key question I had was about the infrastructure needs, and Brent addressed those in his presentation, so
Okay.
I'm set. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Councilmember Hoderick. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krunga.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions, and you may be able to answer all these. Brett can come up if not. But just to clarify, it's about 3 times that you were before the Planning Commission as you guys negotiated this.
Yes, I know we came at least once for a concept review, which, by the way, is very helpful for developers to be able to do that. So I want to say at least 3 times that we've met with them for sure. So yeah, it certainly evolved over that at that time.
And I just asked that because I think that then helps me understand that's part of that negotiated
Yeah,
process
right.
of working with them.
Yes.
Second question that's kind of important to me. Looking at what would be sort of by right with the RT transitional versus this POD, essentially, what would have more open space? I mean, I'm getting that we are going to have more open recreational space with this POD than you ever could have with the current RT zone.
I can answer that, and Brent can as well. With the PUD, our intent on it always is to try to cluster and create more open space. So could you get 40% with an RT? Probably, but this enabled us to use different types of products and try to cluster them where we can, where it makes sense, and to provide that open space. So I'd say certainly by doing the PUD, it's enabled us to have that flexibility to provide as much open space as we can.
Okay, understood. Because I know that's also a standard of the POD is around kind of that
Right.
open space
Yep.
benefit. Other quick question was, you mentioned around the brownfield, have you done a brownfield redevelopment, Robertson Brothers, before?
I'd say half of what we have right now are brownfield. That's what's left. That's what's available right now. I mean, like I said, there's another community we have a large parcel in that usually there aren't a lot of more parcels in, and it's because it's a brownfield site. So we're not shy about taking that on. It is a lot of work and cost certainly up front to do that, but we are very experienced with dealing with brownfields for sure.
Okay, last quick question.
Yeah.
So you answered this partly, Brent, but just to clarify, there's that public easement that will be on the public walkway in and around
Yes.
and up to the adjoining kind of Troy Trails at some point. Will it be up to the city to maintain that? You're building it, but does the city maintain it, or how does that, or the homeowners association, how does that work?
It'll be part of the homeowners association, yes, for sure.
That's-
It'll be in the master deed, and yes, it'll be part of their common element to maintain.
Thank you. Good questions, Mayor Pro Tem. Additional, Councilmember Erickson Gall.
Thank you, Mayor. There's been some discussion about the Long Lake Road access. I know you're going to have to work with the county. That's correct? That's a county jurisdiction?
It is the county. We have had several conversations with them, so I think they're comfortable with what we're proposing. We've worked through our consultants and the road commission, and I believe what we're showing you is something that they've accepted.
That was going to be my question, so thank you. This may not be for you. Regarding the regional detention basin, it's my understanding that it's not just the idea of having a basin that's going to be for several developments. It's going to, the intent is for it to be part of our trail system and provide some interesting focus. I don't know if you can answer that, Brent.
It is intended to be an amenity for those who are utilizing the trail system. So one of the things Troy does not have an overabundance of is water features. So this will be, there's going to be standing water there, so it will be an amenity for those who are out walking or cycling on the non-motorized pathway.
And then the existing property, I know I've been in Troy for almost 20 years, and it's pretty much looked the same way it has. Do we have a sense of how long that property has sat in that condition?
City Manager Miller?
My knowledge of the situation is that when Long Lake was expanded to its current dimensions and lanes, at that time, a lot of the fill from building the road was put on the site, while the site was also used as a batch plant.
Are we talking decades here?
Just under 2 decades, yes.
Well, I started in 2002, and it was challenged at that time.
Okay.
So 2 decades.
Mayor, I would like Brent to clarify, who's going to own the regional stormwater detention basin? I think this is important to know.
The city of Troy would own it.
And we like that because city detention basins do not get in disrepair as much as private detention basins.
Actually, can I follow up on while we're talking about the basin? And maybe this came up a lot when we were talking about the Eckford development. There's a lot of concerns in that neighborhood about, and I'm looking at you, Brent, I know you don't, this is not your department, engineering, but I'll put you on the spot, I'm kidding. There's been a lot of concerns by the Eckford residents and the people in that surrounding communities, even today hearing about this particular project, that they're worried about the impact this development will have on the water in their yards and how that's going to play out. And at the time we talked about or we approved the Eckford development, we were less further along with this regional detention feature, as I understand. So could we maybe get a little more information about that? I mean, if you have any more to give, how that will not, I mean, it's wonderful that it's a water amenity for people walking on the trail. Love that, of course. But can we talk a little bit about the benefit to the community as far as actually protecting their valuable property from water?
Yeah, and that's getting a little bit beyond my expertise. Scott Finley is here. What I will say is the engineering department is aware of the concerns of the residents. We've had a couple of years now of really heavy rains, and you know, they're aware of it, and they're aware of the concerns for these projects that are coming down the line. So if there's an opportunity to first of all, by law, new developments are not allowed to negatively impact neighboring properties. But if we can take this infrastructure and actually improve versus just hold steady to what's there, we will do so. One of the things I mentioned to Bob and Mark today when we were talking about this presentation is I wish we had a drawing that we could put up on the screen and show everybody, you know, this is what it's going to look like with the stormwater detention and the trailway and that amenity, and we'll work on that and we'll get something in front of you. It's kind of been a work in progress as we get closer to the finish line for this amenity. And Scott Finley, the city engineer, is standing next to me.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Good evening. So yeah, we have been making progress with the regional pond. HRC, we've engaged them to do the design. It's currently over at the Drain Commission looking for permits right now. So we've been actively working with the Drain Commission as the Fredericks Drain is a large 78-inch diameter storm sewer that goes through DPW property. Yep. And it kind of cut off most of the flow that's going through the natural drain on Eckford. So it takes all the heavy weather flow. We're still letting the dry weather flow go through, so you still have that stream effect on the existing Eckford properties. But when the heavier events come, the drain is diverted, all the high water goes through the open drain. So the city already has a pond on our property. It takes in all the DPW site, and it takes in one other subdivision to the north. So with expanding the pond to include the new developments, the existing subdivision, the existing DPW, it's going from a 10-year pond up to a 100-year storm. So we're greatly increasing the capacity of the storm sewer, the detention pond right now. So right now it can only hold a 10-year storm. So it's going up to 100-year storm. There's going to be additional capacity when we widen Rochester Road and add those extra lanes of pavement built into this pond as well. So Frederick Shane is out onto Rochester Road. So all this additional storage capacity in this pond will provide relief in the Frederick Strain. So not only locally here, but for the whole drainage shed area. So the county's very excited about this project too, the Drain Commissioner's Office.
Okay, so, and just so I think I heard the applicant talk about it, they're bearing the cost of this. I mean, this is their detention pond regardless, right? I mean, they've got to build.
Well, it's the city's detention.
Well, it's our pond, but
They are constructing it.
right. Okay.
Correct. We're doing the design and getting it permitted, so
They're
that,
doing it.
and they're going to do all the heavy lifting with all the big machines and get it constructed.
Okay. Councilmember Hoderick, you want to ask about that?
I want to make sure I heard you. One of the things that I'm assuming happens, we know Rochester Road's coming. We know these developments are proposed or already going in there, that you all do a comprehensive look. And I think I heard you mention Rochester Road and the expansion and the impact there. These are the things that residents worry about when they know that there's change. We're not engineers, but we know enough to know water has to go somewhere. And extra lanes is problematic. So I heard you mention that. Can you drive that home a little bit more for my comfort level?
Well, yeah, so Rochester Road is expanding. It's adding an extra lane of pavement. We're making this pond oversized so that the extra runoff from that extra lane of pavement would be accounted for back here. So we're going to hold more water back in this pond for a longer period of time so that the water that falls on Rochester Road can go away first. And we're going to hold more water back here so that the system doesn't get overloaded. It's kind of a timing issue. So we can hold more water for a longer period of time. It relieves problems further downstream.
While Scott's up here, any questions about water? Or, yeah? Councilmember Abraham? So you just want to say hi? Yeah.
Traffic, so.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that works too. Yeah.
So not detention, not as fun as detention. Inherently, when you add 146 units, there's going to be more traffic coming in and off this site onto roads that are extremely heavily used, and with Rochester Road being expanded pretty intensely. It's already a difficult situation. There was a very comprehensive traffic study included in the agenda packet. For those that perhaps couldn't slog all the way through a really technical report, can you comment a little bit on what the traffic impact would be and how it can get mitigated and when?
Well, the biggest mitigating factor that's going to happen is with the expansion of Rochester Road. It's going to add the extra lane, it's going to add the boulevard there. It's long overdue for the area as it exists. It's going to make it a lot safer. I mean, OHM's our expert, that's why they're reviewing the traffic study. It's about the best answer I could give right now is that the expansion of Rochester Road is going to provide the mitigation with the extra lanes and the boulevard for the safety. Because there are additional cars, but there's not that many trips today out on Rochester Road that has it. So it's not a big impact. So the expansion to Rochester Road is going to be the biggest thing.
And for those who aren't following the expansion as closely as we are on council, can you identify the timing for that?
All the heavy lifting should start in 2025. It should go out to MDOT to bid late 2004. You could start seeing poles get relocated as early as this fall. Underground utilities all starting to move further away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions. I know in the Planning Commission meeting in December this was asked, but what percentage do we know of the single-family detached homes may be the ranch style?
Could be 100% if 20 people want to buy it. So we try to keep it flexible, and we made sure that they'd all fit, but it's whatever somebody selects to build. So I would anticipate, quite honestly, in other communities that are similar with the mix of the ranch and the two-story, it's around, it's about a third. So I'd say probably 6 or 7, to be honest.
Okay, because I know that's always a concern. You know, we want to increase that stock of.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Well, when we've got 20 some odd more at Meadows of Troy, so there
Yeah,
are options there too.
The more the better, so. And then the other thing is, I know this was also discussed, was the stages and the over, you know, we talked about what is going to be done in stage 1 versus stage 2, and also what is the overall like timeline that we're anticipating for the project?
Sure. So the phases, we're anticipating 2 phases. Really the majority of it would be in phase 1. So the road essentially coming off of Long Lake, all of the single family would be in phase 1. And then that road that connects out, same road that curves out to Rochester, all of that would be done in phase 1. And then probably about 2/3 of both of the townhome sections would be done as part of phase 1. So I would say the majority of the site would be phase 1. The amenities, since we're building up the scenic overlook as we build the basements and build up, you know, those areas, that will take a little bit more time. That'll occur over time. So I'd say that would be phase 2. Now the internal, you know, pathways and that sort of thing, that'll be done in phase 1. That answer that?
Yes, thank you.
And then as far as timing, you know, our hope would be to start developing sometime, you know, later this year. Our hope would be to get it paved this year. That's really what we're focusing on. I think we can do it. It's just a lot of work that still has to be done. So if that happens, you know, obviously we'd like to start going vertical toward the end of the year, have models up in the spring next year. And I'd say it's probably about a 3 to 4 year build out depending on sales.
Will one of your models be a ranch? Will you commit to
Haven't
that?
decided that yet. We'll direct them down the street unless we're sold out.
All right. Additional questions? I think I asked my questions, or most of them got addressed. Okay, and that's it. I'll open up the public hearing then.
Great.
Thank you. I don't see that anybody's actually signed up to speak on E1 for the public hearing, but that doesn't prohibit anybody from speaking now if you so choose. Anyone like to speak on this item? All right, then I will close the public hearing, and I'll ask for someone to move the resolution for consideration and further discussion. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move E1, public hearing, plan unit development, file number PUD 019 JPLN 2022-0013, proposed Village of Troy PUD, south side of Long Lake, west of Rochester, parcels 882015, 201046, and number 88-20-15, -201-033. Section 15, currently zoned RT, one family attached residential, R1C, one family residential, and CB, Community Business District, as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve E1, public hearing, planned unit development, file number, here we go again, PUD 019 JPLN 2022-0013, proposed Village of Troy PUD, south side of Long Lake, west of Rochester, parcels number 88-20-15-201, 88-20-046 and number 88-20-15-201-033. Section 15, currently zoned RT, one family attached residential, R1C, one family residential, and CB, community business district, as printed in the agenda packet. Discussion. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crankle.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start. I spent some time out at the land this weekend and spent some time watching, of course, the Planning Commission meeting and really kind of delving into this. And I want to start by being honest that I support this project, and I'll explain in a minute the reasons why. But I know those of you listening, you're probably thinking, okay, this is another open space that's getting developed, more density being added to Troy. And I was with you. Those are exactly my thoughts, you know, as I have lived in Troy, seeing these places sort of more and more turn into different developments. But I think with time and in this role, when I go by an open space, I now ask the question, who owns it? What does the master plan say should be done with this land? What's the nature of the land? And so based on those things and the way I want to kind of construct why I'm supporting this, it's based around exactly that, the nature of the land. Not everything is beautiful green open space. So the nature of the land, the history of what's been proposed on that land, the positionality of the land, and the applicant offerings. So with the first, I think what I have latched onto the most is the nature of that land. It is not a happy green space. It is blighted land. It'll be a brownfield redevelopment. And the fact that it's basically sat vacant for 20 some odd years, it's probably not going to be a park or anything. And the fact that it's a brownfield just means it's blighted, and it has to go through a process of being redeveloped. Is not every builder is going to be, or developer is going to want to tackle that, as we heard from the applicant today. Not everyone wants to dive into that work. And the fact that we have something, I commend that. And then if you just look at the history of what has been proposed, what was shared, it's in the questions I had asked before the meeting, a couple things, one of which was a Home Depot, a large shopping center. And so if I think of the neighbors next door, this isn't a question of is it going to be developed or not, but what is it going to be developed as? And what best can respect the residents in terms of the type of development that goes into place? And I would say if it's a Home Depot, probably you would prefer to have something that is a development that has amenities that you can enjoy if you're a neighbor and you're living close by. So if I look at that history, and then I look at the positionality. So as I walked on, I put my mud boots on, went out and walked on the land, is that differently than other developments that I've had more of a consternation with, this one side of it is single-family residential. I've had other developments where it's been a couple sides that we've looked at. It's one side, and I really respect that the developer is making the decision to put single-family detached homes abutting the area that is single-family residential. So I appreciate that. That offer to do that, because you have, by right, as RT, you could have put the townhomes and had more density. So looking around, looking at the industrial area behind it, and actually recognizing that just to the commercial side of it is the way that that's constructed and the type, the form and design of those buildings. Actually, I think there's a good transition from that to what's being built next to that. And it's also not directly smack dab on the corner. We heard residents, they don't like things jam-packed in the actual corner, so this isn't actually in that corner. And then the thing I go back to, the applicant offerings and some creativity in that is, you know, offering additional screening. 3 times you came to the Planning Commission, we're willing to rework and negotiate, offering additional screening, the trail connections to go to our Troy trails. We've been hearing that is one of the number one things that our residents want, is they want trails, more trails, and this helps to kind of encourage that. The pocket parks and open space, the sledding hill, which is actually a really original way to move some of that fill that you can't do something else with, and it also screens from the industrial area. The dog park, the EV chargers, as you wish, you know, as needed in your garages. And all of that kind of open space turns out to be about 40%. And that is something for the health and welfare of our residents to be able to use. So overall, I do think that adds something to the health and welfare. And I think that, in my mind, this adds an economic vitality to this corner, where I can imagine people waking up in some of these homes, townhomes, single-family homes, getting up on a Saturday morning, and you actually walk across Long Lake. A lot of people don't do that today. But I can imagine, you go to Big B Coffee, you get your coffee, Troy's Community Coffee Shop, you get your coffee, and you go get a hen pie. You should try those at a Shots Pie. Your coffee and pie, you walk back, you're with your dog, you go to the dog park, you walk on the trails through Troy on a Saturday morning with your coffee, Big B. I just think that adds a lot of vitality. So for these reasons, I will be supporting this project.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Cranka. I appreciate those comments. Additional discussion? You covered a lot of bases. Yeah. No?
Mayor.
Go ahead. Councilmember Hoderick?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You covered a lot of the details, and I guess I'd just like to sum that up with, we have to look at the standards and the intent with our master plan when we're looking at these proposals. I know, backing up just a second here, there are a lot of residents that will say, why does it have to change? Vote no, don't change it, leave it be. Honestly, unless we can articulate a really specific argument to vote no beyond there are a lot of residents who just don't want anything, voting no becomes very problematic. I know because I sit and try every time one of these proposals comes to us. I write, what if I wanted to vote yes? What would be my arguments? What if I voted no? What would be my arguments? As if I was writing it for someone else. I was their speechwriter. The no arguments for this, the yes arguments flow off your fingertips onto the keyboard. The entire intent of a PUD and the negotiated process that needs to go into it, that's been met. The Planning Commission negotiated. If you think this was a density grab, with all due respect to the developer, if it was an attempt at a density grab, that was thwarted. I think he would probably agree. They finessed this plan, I believe, beautifully and to the betterment for the developer in the end. I think you'll have a better overall product as a result of that negotiated process. So when you see it come to us, it can look like maybe we haven't spent a lot of time or talked. It's because that part of the process happened at the Planning Commission, and we all pay attention to that and watch to see that. In those negotiations, more and more of the standards that need to be met became more clearly met over the process. And our planning director underlined some. I had gone through the same process of checking off what are the standards that are met. The public benefit has a quality of life aspect to it, the public trails, a piece of it. The other one that's happening in a comprehensive way with people looking at a bigger picture is that water retention. There will be a quality of life piece because it sounds like they're going to make it attractive and an amenity, but most importantly, from a health and safety, we are gaining something not with the partnership of this development and a couple others that have been thoughtfully proposed there. These ideas don't come in a month ago and then just come before us. All of this has been discussed with engineering, our fire departments and whatnot. And that's what I'm looking for as I go to make my decision. The regional stormwater piece is huge. It's a huge relief for me to hear that dialogue more, and I bet the county is excited about that, and we should all be very excited about that as well. When you drive by there, you can look and say that's green space with trees. Look at it closely. 552 quality trees are going to be brought in. Quality trees, trees that are over time, going to improve the aesthetics. This is a tree-loving city. Its residents really love it. We have a tree ordinance that tries to push for that. This also is met. And so obviously, based on everything I've just said, I will be supporting the project. And I again want to thank our Planning Commission for the thoughtful, really intelligent, caring manner that they worked to negotiate with this developer. And I would also like to say to the developer, I appreciated watching you hear them, truly listen to understand and hear, so that you end out with an even better product in the end as a result of the process. That's how it should work. And I think our community can be very proud of that on the part of these bodies. If you're really wondering about that, go back and watch them. Find the Planning Commission meetings where you see the dialogue, and you will see how that work goes. Change is going to happen. Private property rights are there. Our challenge is, how do we finesse that change to the best of our ability to fit with the community that we want to have? And that's what we've really attempted to do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. Councilmember Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. I know certainly in family gatherings, I often get asked the question of what's going on with the green space in Troy. Why is there so much development? Why does council approve such developments? And the comparison that most residents, and certainly a lot of my family members have, is much like what Councilwoman Hoderick said. It's a green space. Why are you building on it? But that's not the apt comparison. You can't say it's a green space and now you want to put this proposed development. It's not an apt comparison. What we on council have to look at is what could be built on that property by right versus what is being proposed. And that's a really important distinction, because if a developer, if a builder is building by right, it never has to come to council. As the property owner, they can build at that density, of course, meeting, the ordinances, but it never comes to council for approval. And so when it comes to the table, my view is what could be built there by right without council even having the ability to weigh in on it, with something like this, a PUD, where we do. And to me, what makes this PUD a more viable option is, in fact, that it is less dense than what could be built there by right. So Brent, when you said, I know a council member is going to ask me, I would have been that council member that did, so you pegged me right on. You know me well. There's going to be development, there's going to be more traffic. How dense we build is up to us at this table, and that PUD takes some of that density out. But a very close second in terms of why this project appealed to me was, in fact, what most people wouldn't think of as with great appeal, is that detention basin. I can count at least 3, if not 4, 100-year storms that we've had in the past 10 years. They're no longer 100-year storms. They're becoming so much more frequent. It is a topic that comes up way more frequently at the council table than I ever could have conceived of when I came here 8 years ago. That feature, while it may not have the appearance of a really, high-quality resident amenity, is huge. It is so hugely impactful. The fact that it will make the trail that's right next to it that much more appealing is great, but the functionality of it is huge. Of course, the quasi-public amenities like the dog park, the sledding hill, the trail. I very much appreciate that, as well as the high quality of the construction. So don't mean to downplay the thought put into what the developer has done to make it a really comprehensive project. That certainly wasn't the intent. But looking at it as dispassionately as I can, it is the right thing for that area. Right now, it's a field full of cottonwoods that really cannot be used in any beneficial way to our residents. And this moves us in the right direction to have it be beneficial. So I will be supporting the project.
Thank you, Councilmember Abraham. Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. Other council members have said a lot of what I was going to say, so I can keep this quick, too. I agree with Councilmember Chamberlain-Krianga. I put on my Wellingtons and spent some time this Sunday walking all over that property. It's not ideal, beautiful green space in its current state. I had to dodge roofing tiles and mounds of gravel and pits and hills everywhere. This is not a beautiful, pristine forest that's being transformed into homes. It's a blighted field that's going to be transformed into something hopefully much more beautiful and produce some usable green space. Other things that I think about and that I hear people talking about, in addition to the green space issue, is traffic. And I feel very comfortable hearing that they have a plan in place for the impact on Long Lake Road, which concerns me the most. I've personally witnessed how backed up Long Lake can get at certain times of the day. I used to, in a previous employment, I used to drive past that almost every day. The Rochester Road expansion, it's sounding like by the time the townhomes, which are going to be most affected by that, are being built and done, we'll be well underway to expanding Rochester Road, and that hopefully that expansion will alleviate any of the issues. I know making a left turn on Rochester Road in that area is taking your life in your hands. So I'm looking forward to that expansion and hoping that that will alleviate those traffic problems. I agree that the PUD process, negotiated process that the Planning Commission went through and that we're going through here is much more preferable than just telling this developer, just, go do what the current zoning allows you to do. Here we've come up with a beautiful plan that's going to provide a lot of benefits to the city that the developer would be under no obligation to do if they just put in whatever the current zoning allowed them to do. I agree that the regional detention pond is huge. I'm especially thrilled to know that the intent is to make it part of our trail system. I think our trail system, as it's developing, is becoming a jewel of the city, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with that detention pond so that it's not just your normal, unattractive piece of land with a big fence around it, that it's something that people are actually going to be able to enjoy and appreciate. A lot, echoing what Councilmember Hoderick said about people wanting things to stay the same. People want to live in Troy. I understand. I moved here by choice. Troy's a beautiful city. People want to live here. This project gives us 146 new homes, some of which are attainable price points, so that, I live nearby the Meadows of Troy, and it is a beautiful development, and it's going along beautifully, but those are not attainable priced homes. This provides us with that missing middle, the attainable homes, and that's critical. And as I was mentioning earlier, I live near Meadows of Troy. I've talked to somebody who is right next door, says that this builder has been doing a great job. that had minimal impact on the surrounding area. That's very important to me because I have frequently heard from people in the city about how they've had negative experience with new building developments. And everything that I've seen, personally witnessed and heard about so far with Robertson Brothers is that their builders will do a good job on minimizing the impact to the surrounding community. So for all those reasons, I'll be supporting this tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Erickson Galt. Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'll be brief as well because I agree with the sentiments of my council members as well. Obviously, the proposed project is beneficial, I think, to the city and to the residents in a lot of different ways. Obviously, the detention pond is a huge benefit. And the other amenities, the trails, I really appreciate that they are really thinking about and very thoughtful about the project and how it can really interact and connect and enhance what we already have. And so by connecting those Troy trails, I think that's really beneficial. Also the dog park and the sledding hill, all of those are really great things. I also think it's very aesthetically pleasing. And I think that I really appreciate that the developer has really listened to the recommendations of the Planning Commission, made adjustments as needed, and also worked with the neighbors as well, and provided really good buffers so that everything is kind of compatible and it just fits well, I believe, in that area, especially compared to what we presently have. And so for those reasons, I believe that, I will be voting yes, and I believe that it's a very thoughtful project.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks. You were right. You were brief. You're the one. We all say we're going to be brief, and none of us ever are, but you actually were. So good job. I will probably not be brief, but that's just the way it goes. I'm the last on this one, I think. But a couple of things. I mean, and so much has been said, so I'll try to keep it new and innovative, but I still feel like I have some things to say. I think it's been talked about a little bit. Councilmember Hoderick brought it up. It's been touched on by others, but was a little bit lost in the presentation was the amount of time and the iterations that this plan have gone before the Planning Commission and the amount of work done with the Planning Commission, with city staff to get to where we are today. I don't want that to be lost on anybody because it does look, although we've been talking about this for a little over an hour, I don't want anyone to think that this is just some big project that has come before us and here we are. I mean, it definitely, I've been following this project personally for about a year in my role watching from the outside through the Planning Commission meetings and through conversations with people over the year. And it really is a better product today than what was presented initially. And even what was presented initially was nice. But the Planning Commission has done a wonderful job with this applicant in getting to where we are today. So I really do. I appreciate each of those members who have played an active role in that process, and I appreciate the developer for hearing and working with and making the changes requested, and actually, I think at times doing even more or better than what they were asking for you at the time. So thank you for that. We talked about the economic vitality, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig. It's really interesting. For years I drove by this site, and I'll be honest, I thought it was an undevelopable site. I figured if it wasn't developed by now, it probably can't be developed at this point. I mean, I learned later, of course, that's not the case. I think a family owned it for years and didn't want to let go, and finally decided they wanted to do that. But this is not the case of, 10 to 20 acres of beautiful woods. Although there are trees there, it's not the prettiest site. And if you do walk around, you see there's been a lot of dumping of materials and things in there that make it even less desirable. I am, back to the economic vitality, you talk about getting your coffee or your pie, but it's gonna have a ripple effect, I think, in this neighborhood, in this intersection. I hope that this kind of quality development encourages that shopping center, that corner to expand and to upgrade and it's going to have to, because it's going to realize quickly there's 140-plus new homeowners and residents, or more than that, that are going to want to use their services. It's going to be a great opportunity. But even we heard today, and I've talked to Larry over the past couple weeks, who he owns Grandma's Gardens, which is nearby. He's committed to, he wants to upgrade the look of his property because of this development. I mean, so there is going to be a ripple effect, I think, that's really important. And we do hear a lot about parts of Troy that maybe look a little more tired than others. And this is an opportunity to help improve that. I also think it's a very creative use of the site. And to some, there is density, obviously, which is difficult. But the fact the time and energy was put into figuring out what's going to be the best buffer, what's going to be something that maybe isn't, it's not affordable housing, but it might be more attainable for certain people. I think it's important that our city recognize that it's going to be difficult to have too much affordable type housing in the city of Troy because of the services we have with our school district, and people want to be here. So that's automatically going to increase the prices. But this product does provide the potential for some variance in socioeconomic circumstances, and certainly in a quality way, and I appreciate that very much. I think for me the key is quality development in combination with the creative use of the site and the public amenities that we can get. We're talking about this regional stormwater detention, which doesn't sound that exciting, but when you've had several residents over the past year especially really come to you and say, I'm really worried about my house and my property and it's flooding and all of this, to hear that there is actually further steps in that plan and that process than there were last time a development came before us really makes me happy. And to know that, okay, at the time we approved that last development, I felt maybe I was stepping out a little bit ahead of where I felt comfortable because we weren't so sure where those water issues were going to land. But hearing that we're even further along, the county's excited. We've got Robertson who's ready, is going to do it anyway, essentially. We just have to figure out how that works in the region. That is a huge benefit for me and for the city. It's key for me. We've talked a lot about the Troy Trails. I think that is obviously an exciting thing. Those of you who've been on our Troy Trails, the 3 phases we have so far, I've never had anyone disappointed with them. They're doing very well in our city. We know consistently our residents want them, as you mentioned, and this is a great opportunity to expand that network and to provide some connectivity, which is the thing we currently lack with our Troy Trail. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those plans can progress. It's exciting to have Robertson involved in that process, recognizing that that is going to bring more outside people into their semi-controlled neighborhood, but they're willing participants and they see the benefit of that as well. The other thing that is interesting to me in this perspective, and this is a rare opportunity where council theoretically or city administration gets to negotiate with a developer in something. It's conditional rezonings. We're not allowed to actually put conditions on it. We can't negotiate. Obviously, other cluster developments and things like that, we're not allowed to. This is the opportunity to do that. And I feel sufficient from an outside body, governing body perspective that our city administration in combination with our appointed planning commissioners have done their job and done an effective job in representing the city's interests in negotiating this PUD. And so for those reasons, I will also be supporting it. Although we know where everyone stands, we need to officially call for the vote for Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crainga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. That concludes our public hearings for this evening. Does anyone need 5 minutes? Can we take a 5-minute recess? everybody. Sorry, Councilmember Hoderick, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Cranka. I said 5 minutes. I wanted to do it. We did it. All right. All right. Next up on the agenda is public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have 2 people signed up this evening. I see them back there in the corner. First up is Carla Reeb. And Carla, come on up. As you know, we have 3 minutes for public comment. 1 minute left. Yellow light goes on. When the red light goes on, your 3 minutes are up, and you will be done. Oh, sorry, City Attorney Bloom. I started without you.
Good evening, council members, Mayor.
Put your mic down for us, Carla.
I'm a little short.
Much better. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. As you know, the Stage Nature Center is designated as a Troy Park, and we have an opportunity to rent our pavilion, which is similar to the shelters that you see at many of the Troy's parks. So we have a pavilion and we have an indoor facility that allows us to do room rentals and pavilion rentals as a source of revenue for the Nature Center. Currently, if a rental group wants to apply for a wine and beer license, we do it through the Recreation Department, where they issue shelter permits for wine and beer. And because we have a pavilion, that's where we apply for our permits. There is another option for renters that want to have spirits also served for wedding ceremonies and such. That option, we go through the state of Michigan and apply for a special one-day liquor license if they want spirits. But currently, when a renter wants to serve wine or beer, and we have them do it under the pavilion, and it's restricted to the pavilion, just like the shelters are restricted that the beer and wine stay under the shelters. So at this time, getting the beer and wine permits from the Recreation Department is a very easy and short way of getting the permit. It's quick. Getting it through the state when they want spirits takes a much longer process. Takes several weeks to process the application, go to the police department, leave it at the police department, mail it away. So it's a longer process. So the restrictions are that when we have it at the pavilion is rented from May till October. That eliminates us using the indoor facility, which is a very large indoor facility that we also rent for meetings and ceremonies, showers, and that sort of thing. So during the winter months, the rentals that we have, we do not allow any wine or beer to be served. So we're asking that we be allowed, under the same wine and beer permit, to be allowed to have wine and beer permits applied for our renters, and under the pavilion and in the indoor classrooms.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming forward. Next up is Jen Peters, who I have a feeling will speak to a similar nature.
Good evening. I'm Jen Peters, Executive Director at the Troy Historic Village. And yes, very similar issue. I'm here just to support the request to revise the Troy Historical Society and Troy Nature Society's operating agreements to give us more flexibility in what we can allow for rentals and alcohol. Carla already stated she's got the pavilion. She's got a little bit of ability to use similar to the parks process. We don't have a pavilion, so we have to have a issued by the state of Michigan, either a nonprofit license or a Class C liquor license through a caterer. And what we're finding now with the Niles Barnard House open is that it is prohibitive to families who might want to have a celebration event, just a small gathering and maybe a couple bottles of wine. It costs the same to go get the whole nonprofit liquor license, should they be be able to get one. So it's a long process for them. And again, I'm here to answer any questions and just to voice my support for this adjustment. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and business. Well, you're not on here, sir. But Cindy's not here, so I'm going to make an exception.
Waive the rules.
I make a motion to waive the rules to allow the additional speaker for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses.
Thank you.
I got to get the vote. You're going to support that? Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve that waiver of the rules to allow this additional public speaker. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crainga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Sir, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Very gracious. Thank you. I'm Lady 7 of Troy. We need to fix that fax machine that we have in lieu of a computer up there. I rise to speak. My name is Rennis Noshai. I live in the city. I reside at 168 Melanie Lane. And I rise today to speak to item J3A, I believe, which is the a proclamation for our firefighter. And I wanted to come up and speak tonight as to that issue because I thought it important and I thought the timing of it auspicious concerning our recent events concerning our firefighters. And I wanted to congratulate our firefighter because as a friend and supporter of all firefighters in this town, both current as well as retired, I know the incredible work that they all do. And so for him to be the firefighter of the year, it must be something unique and special. But I also wanted to give him just the tiniest little bit of warning about what transpires in the city once he will join, as he inevitably will do, the retired ranks. What will happen, and I speak as to this from recent personal experience, is that there will be no more accolades. There will be no more proclamations. And I have a feeling that he will not be heard any longer. I recently attended a firefighters incentive and trust board meeting, and one of the firefighters, some of them are here tonight, but one of the firefighters spoke at that meeting, and he sought to ask a question under public comment. When he attempted to do so, the city attorney, of course, immediately pointed out to him that this is not the time to ask questions, rather it's time just to make comment. And of course that is appropriate pursuant to the rules, but speaking to that firefighter of the year, it occurs to me that when you get to that category, to the retired category, it is problematic because the questions that these retirees have are not being answered. And the plan that we're told that the city is currently undergoing a process of some sort for creating it and bringing it to you to vote upon is being done by the very same people that arguably caused the problem to begin with. And they're doing so without any input from the retirees. They all have questions, and they seek leadership and they seek guidance in this process. The question that was asked at that meeting was interesting. It was a Nixon question. What did the city council, what did the city administration know, and what did it know? And there's no answer to that question. And I think it's incumbent upon this board to start asking that question, to have the debate publicly. And since I have 15 seconds, unrelated to this, I see that you're going into a closed session. Mr. Baker, I know you're an attorney. How are we going into this closed session without any backup materials, without any write-up from the city attorney saying that it's proper to do so? Thank you.
That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Now's an opportunity for City Council and City Administration to respond and reply. Relating to the liquor issues, there's a report on our agenda. I'd prefer if we speak about that at that time. As it relates to the other matter, any comment from City Administration? I will only state that I'm fully comfortable going into closed session if that's what the board votes on based on the materials provided to me. So I wouldn't be concerned about that from that perspective. And I will move on to the next item, which is postponed items. We have none, and we'll move on to regular business. I-1 is board and committee appointments. I have no mayoral appointments this evening, so we'll move it over to Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crainga for City Council appointments.
Thank you. Yes. I will first of all start with the Election Commission. So I move the reappointment to the Election Commission of Stephen Sadler and Ray Watts for the terms expiring January 31st, 2024.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve the nomination to the Election Commission of Stephen Sadler and Ray Watts for the terms expiring January 31st, 2024. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Traffic Committee, I will move the reappointments of Richard Kilmer, Al Petrulis, and Peter Zeigenfelder to the Traffic Committee for the terms expiring January 31st, 2026, and move the appointment of Deepti Agarwal to the Traffic Committee for the term expiring July 31st, 2023.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve the nominations to the Traffic Committee of Deepti Agarwal for the term expiring July 31st, 2023, and Richard Kilmer and Al Petrulis for the terms expiring January 31st, 2026. Any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Appointments.
Did I say nomination?
They're written as nominations, but they're appointments.
The appointments of. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga?
Yes.
Motion carries. You got one more? Oh, no, we did it.
No, I'm good.
I'm sorry, that was all of it. All right, that concludes council appointments this evening. We move on to I-2 Board and Committee nominations. I do have one mayoral nomination this evening. I'd like to move the nomination of John R. Richards Jr. for the in-district resident member of our Downtown Development Authority for the term expiring September 30th, 2026.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga, that we approve the nomination of John R. Richards Jr. as the in-district resident member to the Downtown Development Authority for the term expiring September 30th, 2026. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes mayoral nominations this evening, so I'll turn it back over to nobody because Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga has no council nominations this evening. Next up is I-3, a request for closed session. I'll move, be it resolved, that Troy City Council shall meet in closed session as permitted by MCL 15.267H, MCL 15.243G, as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve I-3 as printed in the agenda packet and read into the record. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. When the public meeting here comes to a conclusion, we'll recess from in here and eventually adjourn from the closed session. Next up is I-4, Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Omnia Partners Purchasing Cooperative, Troy Public Library Bookmobile. That'll be introduced by our Library Director, Emily Dumas, and Olivia Olson, our librarian. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Troy Public Library is one of the busiest libraries in the area. Last year, we had over 211,000 visits, 898,000 checkouts, and about 16,000 program attendees. We're on track to increase attendance this year with over 31% more visits and close to 1 million total checkouts as we continue to grow to our pre-COVID numbers. We're also proud to say that about 2/3 of Troy households have a library card. However, even with this robust enthusiasm for the library, we know that there are many in the city who are still not able to access library services. This includes those who are physically unable to visit the library due to disability or illness, our new American residents who may not yet have been introduced to public library services, the patrons who do not have a driver's license or transportation to travel to the building, and anyone else who has not visited the library and is unaware of all that TPL offers. We have been incredibly fortunate that with the passage of the 2020 millage, TPL was able to create its first community engagement department to make sure that every resident has access to library services beyond the building walls. These dedicated staff members make it their mission to bring the library to the community when the community is not able to make it into us. I would like to introduce you to our Head of Community Engagement, Olivia Olson, who will share her vision for how we can expand library services to the entire city by establishing the Troy Public Library Public Bookmobile.
Hello. Our goal with the Bookmobile project is to connect with Troy residents outside of the library building to ensure that all community members have access to library services. I worked on the Rochester Hills Bookmobile years ago and saw firsthand what an incredible outreach tool it can be for all residents, especially those who cannot come to the library due to age or disability, illness or injury, or lack of time or access to transportation. We are modeling our vehicle off of the Monroe County vehicle, which is on the screen, and those are Monroe County patrons using their vehicle. It's easy to drive, it can be easily maintained, and it houses a robust collection of books up to 1,800 titles for patrons of all ages. The Bookmobile will offer library card registration on site also, so patrons who cannot get to the library can still access our amazing apps that offer free ebooks, audiobooks, online learning platforms, and more from home. The Bookmobile also has a retractable awning, which makes it perfect for outdoor programming, such as outdoor story times in the parks, book giveaways, and drop-in tech help, which is a common request from our seniors. Because one of our chief goals is to get books into the hands of Troy children, especially those whose families aren't able to bring them to the library on a regular basis, we would like to include stops to schools and daycares, neighborhoods and apartment complexes, city and neighborhood parks, and outdoor community events such as Troy Days and the Farmers Market to meet Troy families where they are. And I'll say we had a booth at the Farmers Market this summer, and every single day we went, we registered multiple library cards and answered lots of questions. So there are a lot of families who still need library cards. We would also stop by senior living homes and group homes in the community. We have great relationships with many of Troy's senior living homes thanks to our homebound delivery service. But some of our patrons tell us they miss browsing through the collection and choosing their own books to read. The Bookmobile would certainly provide that option to them, and we believe it will be a fantastic continuation of all of our outreach efforts.
And as for the funding of this project, we have already raised 70% of the funds to support the Bookmobile through generous donations from community members and the Friends of the Library. Troy Library's building improvements capital account is underspent this year, and so we are seeking to reallocate those funds to a Bookmobile fund so that we can move forward with green lighting the manufacturing of our vehicle. As the entire process will take at least a year to complete, we plan to continue fundraising efforts to further support this project. If resolved, tonight we are seeking approval to award the contract to Farber Specialty Vehicles per our Omnia Cooperative Purchasing Contract so that we can begin production. We want to thank you for granting us this opportunity to share this exciting possibility to further expand our library services to the community of Troy. At this point, we're happy to take any questions too.
Thank you, Emily. Olivia, any questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be quick, just a couple quick ones. So I did have a question. A resident had raised this, and just firstly to commend the amount of money that you fundraise. That is amazing. How does that interact with the amount then that's being asked? Is that just to be able to upfront be able to pay for the Bookmobile, and then you have that money that will essentially kind of reimburse the portion that has been fundraised?
Correct. So we factored that in to the total cost of it, and we are moving the entire cost over. So what we wanted to do is just make sure that we had the funds available, and then we can go ahead. We wouldn't have to pay for it until it's a net 30 payment. So nothing is due right now, and that's why it gives us the opportunity to fundraise further. But yes, at this point, this was just to make sure that we felt comfortable then giving them the green light to start production.
Got it. Other questions. So I love that we're trying something creative, something different. And it sounds like, Olivia, you have experience doing this. So the other question I was thinking, this is the evaluator in my mind thinking is, what will be the metrics by which you'll know is successful? But you've done it before, and just curious how did, in Rochester Hills, how did they kind of define success? Or how will you know 6 months, 1 year on that you're seeing kind of the the usage that you wanted, or, yeah, love to hear how you looked at that in the past.
Yeah, so we're lucky to have those statistics at our fingertips because that's how we test if the library is successful, if our collections are hitting home with patrons. I think at Rochester, we pretty much did the same thing. The only difference was we look at circulation stats, how quickly things are checking out. Turnover rate, are things flying off the shelves the way they should be, or we hope they are. And then the only different thing is with the bookmobile, we had to look specifically at which stops were popular. And the nice thing about a bookmobile rather than a branch library is if it's a dud stop, we can just go somewhere else. So yeah, so we take, and whoever comes on board, we're also going to be checking those statistics too.
Thank you. Good questions. Any additional questions? Councilmember Brooks.
Would you have to hire more staff to be able to accommodate this?
That's a great question. As it currently stands, we did figure out a schedule where we could use the current staff. We are also speaking with HR about the possibility of expanding our staff. It would be the difference in the amount of stops that they could make. It would also be very appealing to me to have somebody who could act as that bookmobile coordinator and have that be their sole responsibility. I think that would probably be a better setup for it, but we wouldn't necessarily have to. But it is something we're looking into.
Thank you. Good question. Any additional questions? Somebody want to move this resolution? Councilmember Hoderick.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move I-4, Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Omnia Partners Purchasing Cooperative, Troy Public Library Bookmobile, as presented in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hoderick, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve I-4, Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, Omnia Partners Purchasing Cooperative, Troy Public Library Bookmobile, as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Councilmember Hoderick.
Someone who had a loved one that completely had to depend on someone to take her to the library, and it was literally the difference between quality living and not, to be able to do that. I'm thrilled to see us bringing this idea, bless you, to our community. I can only imagine the number of lives that will be lifted with access to something like this. So I applaud and thank you for doing it. And it makes me smile just thinking about it. It'll be fun to see it roll out.
Thank you. Additional comments? I think to just quickly, the idea that you've fundraised 70% of the costs up front says how much the community values the idea of this. And I think that goes a long way. And it's going to be very well received. So thank you for bringing it to us tonight. With that, I'll ask for the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes. Motion carries. Two happy library folks back there. That concludes regular business this evening. Next up at 3. Oh, sorry, Phil's hiding too. That's right. That concludes regular business. Next up is the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Abraham.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Actually, I'm going to make a comment here. I'm trying to figure out the time. Unfortunately, Rennis and the retirees left, but as we speak about J3A and the proclamation that we'll be presenting at our next meeting for our Firefighter of the Year this year, I'm disappointed and a little bit devastated that they all left before I had the chance to make some of these comments, because I think it was a gross misstatement of the realities of what the city's dealing with and how we're handling our fire department, our current members, and our retirees. And I wish that it would have been a little bit clear that that public speaker, although he is a Troy resident, is also a private attorney representing some of them, and also the city attorney for another city. So it was a little bit shocking to me that he came and made those comments, especially as it related to the implications that this council, this city is doing something wrong as it relates to this. I hate to even bring it up because I feel like it gives them more oxygen, and that's often what works best for people who like to make issues out of these things, but I can't let it sit like that. Our retirees and our firefighters mean the world to this city. We're doing everything we can with outside counsel, with inside counsel, with city administration, to make sure the retirees are made as whole as possible as they can be based on what the IRS has dealt us. I think it's absurd to say that we have people creating a new plan who created the bad plan. That's just false. And I wish Rennis was still here so I could say it to his face, but he did leave as soon as he spoke, and that's unfortunate. We have engaged expert outside counsel to help us work out the mess that the city has been faced with after 4+ decades of a plan, which precedes anybody sitting at this table, or I'm sure anybody working in City Hall at this place. So it's disappointing that these kind of comments get made in here, and yet I understand that it's part of the process. It's public comment. I wish that our retirees knew that there is a complete other picture that should be painted, so they understand that there's a lot more than what they're just hearing from one individual or a small handful of individuals. That said, we continue to work on this firefighter issue with more energy and resources than anyone, I think, anticipated, and yet it's a nonstop push, and we will do everything we can to protect our fire department, to take care of our existing firefighters, and of course to make sure our retirees feel heard and feel taken care of and appreciated, not just Lieutenant Herron, our firefighter of the year this year, not just today while he's an active member, but when he's also a retiree. Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here for a consent agenda item, all have passed this evening. Next up are memorandums and future council agenda items. I have 2 to announce this evening. K1, announcement of public hearings. They're both for the March 13th, 2023 City Council meeting. First one is the Long Lake and Crooks Planned Unit Development, file number PUD 2020-0018, Revised Concept Development Plan, northwest corner of Long Lake and Crooks, Section 8, currently zoned O Office District. And the second one is also for March 13th, 2023, the Zoning Ordinance Text Amendment, file number ZOTA 257, Places of Worship. So those have been presented to us. As always, any questions leading up to that meeting, please reach out to city administration so we can work through that process. Next up is public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have one person signed up, and it's resident Mark Gunn. Mark, you have 3 minutes, as you know. Yellow light comes on, you have 1 minute left. Red light means stop.
You got it. Hi, Mark Gunn here. First of all, I'd like to commend all of you guys. It does look like you're looking out for the well-being and the enjoyment of the city for the residents, right? One issue that I'm not a representative, but I'm an advocate for, and it's the wall that we're having issue along 75. I previously had experience with this in Romulus and met with successful result. The MDOT did the sound study, and they have postponed it, the results at a later date to be determined. So in Romulus, the city really got active and got out with the MDOT to try and bring a resolution. And I'm just looking if the city council, if the mayor can kind of bring a little heat to MDOT and say, look, we got to get this resolved, because there's over 1,000 residents in that area that it's terrible. I've been in the houses, I've met with the homeowners, and I just feel bad for them, and they're not enjoying life, as they should in Troy. So, looking for help.
Thanks, Mark. That concludes those who have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Now's an opportunity for council administration to respond or reply. I do know that city staff has been engaged with MDOT as well as the representatives of those neighborhoods especially. I will check up with city staff and see where, if, and what we could possibly do as a body. We've taken actions by issuing proclamations and addressing MDOT directly, as well as all of our county, state, federal representatives as well. I know they're all engaged. Appreciate that you're also involved in this, Mark, and we'll see if there's anything more that we should do that will actually move the needle, because it's been a long road, and certainly those residents need support. Thank you. Anyone else? No council referrals this evening, so we move on to the reports. There's one report. There's one report this evening, and there's the only one to talk about. I'm actually going to start this one out, which I don't normally do, but we were presented with a report for the requested revisions to Troy Historic Society and Troy Nature Society agreements, and I have a few questions that I'm trying to work through to understand the process a little bit. I sometimes think that I hear one thing that sounds very simple, and then I hear another side that sounds like it's a little more complex. I have learned enough at this point that anything we do to allow the Nature Center or the village to have an increased process for the beer and wine licenses from recreation will require, as I understand City Attorney Bloom and City Manager Miller, a zoning amendment and amendments to the agreements with the village and the society, correct?
An ordinance amendment, yes, that is correct.
I said zoning, I'm sorry, an ordinance amendment.
And revisions to the agreements as well. As a policy, should council decide that that's something that they want to move forward with as well.
Okay, so it's a policy, it's an ordinance amendment, and it's an amendment of the agreements with the village and the society. My question that I thought about over the weekend specifically was similar to what Councilmember Hoderick talks about, trying to say yes, trying to say no, what makes the most sense, and can I make an argument for both? And I, unfortunately, as a good lawyer myself, can make an argument for both on why we should do this and why we shouldn't do this, so that's not helping me. So that process didn't work is my point. But that's why I want to open it up to the rest of council to kind of see where we are on this. Certainly, city administration, I understand, they're beholden in a sense to what we direct them to do. So I think now is the opportunity to speak up if you think this is something we should be moving forward with, recognizing the potential obstacles and the potential good that it could do for the two organizations. And I don't care who goes first, but I'd like someone else to. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just ask a question to start. So I didn't realize that as well. I remember reading the ordinance amendment and the agreements, but there's a policy. So what would be the timeline? Are we talking about this would be several, I know an ordinance is a big deal, that can take a period of time. Is it several months it would take to do, or just to get a sense of the workload behind it?
I can address at least part of it. I don't see it taking several months. I think that, again, should council direct us to move forward with it, we would move as expeditiously as possible. We normally, with an ordinance amendment, have it, there are two council agenda meetings because we want to have it as a first reading, if you will, green item, informational item, and then and before council takes action on it, so that all of the residents are aware of what the proposed ordinance amendment would be. As far as the policy amendment, or as far as the policy creation, again, I think that could be done relatively simple. We would need probably at least a month to get that together. And as far as the ordinance, or as far as the contract amendments, I don't know if there are other things. I mean, you're reopening it. These are agreements that are existing. I don't know if there are other things or if this is the only thing. I don't know if council is going to direct us to get, quid pro quo or anything like that as well. If you do, then that might lengthen the process slightly.
City Manager Miller. Thank you, Lori.
I concur with City Manager Bloom, but the only thing I would add...
Attorney Bloom, City
Attorney. What's really important and critical is that council give us the direction, which way to go. You make the tough decisions and we'll make it happen.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't have answers to certain things. Like, I don't know. It's a great way to potentially increase revenue for the village and for the society, or for the village and the, yes, that's right, Nature Center. You're both, yeah. But I worry about potentially, is there risk to your nonprofit status if you're now bringing in too much revenue from events that's not specific to programming or specific from fundraising? I don't have a lot of those questions answered. I don't understand a lot of that personally. That's not my role on this one. So I would want to make sure that was sufficiently addressed. Obviously, these are city properties with city assets that are managed well by the organizations. There's obviously going to be a piece of city liability involved in that. How do we address that? How's it addressed now? So I said a couple meetings ago, I'm intrigued by the idea, and I know it's difficult to try to do what they're doing with these limitations, and so I'd like to help if we can. I recognize there's a lot of other parts, so for me to give direction, I don't know exactly. I guess my best right now at this moment to give direction is to explore it further, but I think that that's not going to satisfy some, and I don't know what I'm actually would be giving directions to do at that point. It doesn't rise to the level of a study session to me. It's not that we need to sit and have a special meeting on this. I think that would be a waste of resources, frankly, from a city standpoint. But I'm just not sure exactly what I might be missing. And I obviously have great faith in city administration that whatever was presented to us would cover all those bases, but I think you need direction on from what we would want before you can even do that. So how do we chicken and egg this situation? I mean, Teresa or Councilmember Brooks?
No, thank you, Mayor. I mean, obviously, I'm in a challenging position because, full disclosure, I am on the board for the Nature Society. So it's hard for me to weigh in fully, but I know that there are questions about, liability and concerns about the city's liability. And so would this change, in the ordinance, change the city's liability in any way?
By allowing for alcohol to be there, yes, it would potentially increase the city's liability.
But, okay, but right now, even if, you still have to apply for a waiver, no matter what, if you serve alcohol, correct? So if you serve alcohol through the longer process versus through a shorter process, is the liability different? Am I making sense?
So you said that there's a waiver process. I think what there is,
alcohol
there's a process where there is a liquor licensee, which is not the city. So it's an insulation for the city. So that is that is required currently under the agreements. It's also required under our current ordinance. If you're referring to the beer and wine in the tent at the Nature Society,
yes.
There is a process there. It covers only the outdoor facility, the tent. That's it.
Correct. So I'm just trying to understand. So I understand that there's that covers the outdoor shelters and it covers the pavilion at the Nature Center as well. But if somebody wanted to have alcohol, like beer or wine, inside the facility or on the ground, indoors essentially, they can have it either through a caterer that has a liquor license, or they can go through a longer process, correct, to get some sort of a permit.
It is, it's a one-day permit through the MLCC, and again, it's a $25 application fee for those established nonprofits. So it is an available option to go through the MLCC. It does take a little bit longer, admittedly, to go and get that. But again, they're very well versed. They're both familiar with this process, and persons who are seeking to use those facilities, they give them enough lead time so that they can have enough time to get that MLCC license.
Go ahead,
That's fine. That's fine. No, because I'm hearing maybe something a little bit differently as far as how easy it is to get that. Because I'm hearing from you, it's very easy to get that, get the permit. But I'm hearing that maybe it's not as easy of a process. So I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm not saying one thing or the other. I just don't know.
I'm currently doing for the Kiwanis Club. I'm currently in the process of doing that, and it's a fairly easy application to fill out, in my opinion.
Well, that's not helping everybody. That's beautiful watching sausage get made or discussed, but it's not helping. Councilmember Erickson Galt, at least for me anyway.
I think what I'm hearing is that what we have now is kind of like a donut hole. you have that ability to get the special permit where you can serve whatever alcohol is allowed by that permit. It may be an easy application to fill, but what I'm hearing is that there's a lengthy process, so it's not really conducive to somebody who wants to have a baby shower or something like that at the facility. Then you also have the ability to go through a brick and mortar restaurant that has a Class C liquor license, and only brick and mortar restaurants have Class C liquor license. And that is perhaps easy to do, but expensive. So if you want to have a casual event where you don't want to spend several $1,000s to cater it and have alcohol, then that's kind of, so for those events in the middle where somebody just wants to have a casual event, they don't have that ability to offer them that option, except for what the Nature Society has through its pavilion, which has been looped into the park policy. So what I'm hearing is, how can we perhaps look at amending our ordinances and our policies to allow for those, casual events who want to just have, mimosas or something, and they don't need to have a full bar. I mean, I don't know that this is helpful in terms of directing you, but that's what I'm hearing, is that they want us to look at that ability to offer a broader range of events versus a huge fundraiser that it's worth going to the MLCC and getting the special license, or a wedding where you're going to have a full dinner anyways. How do we serve those people in the middle who want to have a more casual, more, lower scale event, and allow them to have, just beer or wine?
It's a new missing middle, Ann. So, okay, for me, that helped somewhat, because it looks like, okay, so what is the options to help fill that donut hole? To use a bad metaphor, but it works. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious about that, if that can be achieved without opening doors to other potential uses that we don't want, number one. And I still don't understand I guess I don't fully understand the limitations that exist now as discussed, because it sounds like, I mean, if you're having a baby shower, you usually don't do it you don't plan it the day before. So if it's taking a long time to process those applications, that could be an issue. I don't know how this varies on that, but this is an odd one to discuss like this, and here we're having a pseudo study session that I said we didn't want or need, but I just don't know, from a direction standpoint, I don't think direction of council is to end this conversation tonight. Is that fair to say so far? All right, but I don't think I'm personally comfortable directing you to draft the ordinance amendments. I'd be comfortable giving direction to take it to the next step, meaning maybe again get with the society and the village to talk about specifically what their needs are, to see if there is a way to fill that donut hole, and then come back to us with something that's a little more finite, and gives us a memo to work with and actually give better direction from, potentially suggestions. Does that give some nodding heads? Well, there's at least 4, but I don't, does that make sense, Mark and Lori?
Yes.
I was thinking. Certainly, we're always happy to meet.
Well, yeah, and I know you would. I think we would feel better if we knew that conversation was continuing, so maybe there was a potential product that could come, I keep saying product, but a potential solution that could come back to us that would be a little more actionable than us trying to hash this out and give you direction to make something that we might not fully be aware of all the ramifications or options. That's how I feel anyway. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just really quick, so something that could be helpful for me is to understand what exactly are those liabilities. Some of you, maybe you have things in your mind, I'm not sure. And then when I think about that kind of missing middle, as we talked about, I'm thinking about what exists already now with the outdoor pavilion and the shelter, because those are kind of like missing middle events. I've had events at the shelters in Bullen Park, and they're not massive alcohol, but people have applied for them and whatnot. So have there been cases, so it'd be helpful for me, have we had instances in those missing middle examples, whether at the, in my argumentation, I need to know, have there been examples that have put the city at liability either, at the Nature Center or at, in Bullen Park or any of the parks with pavilions? And if there haven't been instances, well, then that makes me feel a little more comfortable with moving forward.
City Manager Miller?
Off the top of my head, I'm not aware of any issues specifically, but that doesn't mean there might not have been one or two or three.
The other component for me is I'd like to know a little bit about enforcement and how that process looks. Is the city responsible for enforcing these? Is the village and the society capable of properly enforcing these? Because then it's going to be on the city's shoulders if this is the case, as I understand, if we were to make changes like this. So I want to be very clear that the enforcement of these potential violations is done, because I don't want to have a liquor violation committee hearing where it's the city coming up to us and telling we screwed up. That's, if you understand what I'm saying back there. So the enforcement component is important also. Any other comments, questions? I can't, Mr. Schaefer, sorry, it's not set up for this. We can't allow that. Thank you.
Just very quickly, for the Nature Center and Historic Village, it's not that we're not wanting to do this. We have a responsibility. I think we are feeling a huge responsibility to try to think through what are the perhaps unintended consequences. We're looking out for you guys, not just us as well. Everything can seem like, well, if we just had this solution, or a lot of things, there's this simple solution, and if we take the time to think this through, we'll really know what the solution is and then be comfortable with it going forward. Like Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kringa said, understanding, eyes wide open, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and get to the solution. So it's not that, speaking for myself, I'm not wanting to do this. I want to do it right. I want to know what I'm doing. And I just need a little bit more. So.
City administration, do you feel at least semi-directed on what we're looking for?
Absolutely.
Yes.
2 nodding heads there. That's good. All right. That's unanimous. Unanimous consent right there. All right. That can, any other, no, that's the only report. All right. Next up are council comments. We've talked a lot tonight, so that's my warning to all of you. Anything else? All right. I don't see that anybody has signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda for members of the public outside of Troy. We do have a closed session this evening, so I will recess from in here, and like I said, expect to adjourn from the closed session.